Hey John, how are you today?
Hey Charlie, how are you? Good to
I'm
see you.
very good, thank you. We were literally just saying it's only just becoming summer in New York, and we're very ready for the weather to turn up.
No kidding. I mean, I'm so glad it's hot out finally. We wait a long time on the East Coast. It's getting old.
I know. For context, it was 31 degrees yesterday. Well, that's like 90 Fahrenheit, I think.
Is that what it is today?
I think that was yesterday. I think we're getting a little bit cooler again, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But the first question I like to ask everybody, and especially since we are in like the New York, New Jersey area, is how do you like your coffee in the morning?
I like a lot of ways. I like it. If I have regular coffee, I like oat milk. Or I get an iced Americano with oat milk. I'm a big oat milk drinker. But yeah, that's why I like it. I like coffee though, and I like iced coffee mostly, to be honest. But I could drink both. So when it's warm weather out,
Is
I
there
do.
like Is there a particular way that you lean, like why you lean into the oat milk and why you lean into
That's a
the
whole
ice?
story, but like, I learned oat milk a lot in Seattle. I was there in business a few years ago, and they were like, "Oh, you got to have oat milk," and I didn't know it then. It was like 2018, and that changed my whole life because the creaminess and the goodness of it. It was like real milk, but it's non-dairy, which I prefer. And I used to go almond milk all the time, so that's one of the reasons. But I usually get in Seattle too. They're like drip coffee. What's that? They look at you like it's like Europe there, So they're all Americanos and espresso based coffees. They do great coffee there. So that's how it kind of started, and then I just stick with it because I just like the consistency of it. Macadamia milk is also awesome, by the way. I'm a big fan of that as well. There's a place called
Yes,
Lackawanna in my
I can never,
block. Good.
right? I can never get hold of it, but I had it years and years ago. Obviously, I'm allergic to dairy as well, so I'm always interested in, which alternative people choose and why. But yeah, the macadamia one's crazy. It's crazy
It's so
good, but
good.
you can never
It's
get it.
actually better for you. I think that the contents of it though, it's less fattening and less bad for you than like almond milk. So I
Oh,
like it.
really?
You know,
What's fact checking on that?
it's about the consistency, especially in smoothies too. It's like a real milk, except it's not, which is what I like about it. There's not like a watery quality. There's like a really nice,
Yeah.
especially
So today we're gonna get a little bit creative and a little bit chilled out in today's podcast. Sometimes goes hand in hand, sometimes not. But first, tell me, John, what is it that you do and why do you do it?
well, I've had a lot of careers in my life. But I'm essentially, to put it all in one perspective, I'm a creative executive and a systems builder, basically with a background in television, film, and advertising, digital media. I started my career at HBO, and I did my own thing for a little while in LA too. I had a company called Mind Blast and a few other incarnations of that, which we did a lot of content and advertising and strategy for big and small brands. And then I went into advertising and moved to New York, and I sort of got more into the operations side of things from it. I bridge storytelling, strategy, and craft high impact content and operational ecosystems at scale, basically. My leadership style too is so with all that, you have to understand, how to lead people and how to manage projects and how to manage people and how to manage different personalities. And I like to lead with vision, with structure, with heart, bring ideas to life through precision and purpose. And that's like my whole goal when I step into anything.
I love that. And you really have truly undersold yourself. You're an Emmy award-winning producer, correct?
Yeah,
Um,
HBO, yep. I work there.
exactly. You worked in HBO, you've worked with Google, worked with Walmart, with Red Bull and
Mhm.
Samsung. These are big, big names, and obviously an area of where you've learned your craft. Now,
Indeed.
obviously, one of the things that working with kind of these big brands and managing all of these people and the systems, and as well as working on the that blend of storytelling, where is an area that the leaders get wrong?
With as in terms of just like in general.
Yeah, so if they've just in general, you can drill it down from just in general, or even just specifically to the operations leading teams in creativity.
Well, I mean, I think, God, a lot of times they're just impersonal. A lot of people are always, managing up, and I get that and I understand how that works. But a lot of times you have to learn how to, lead with more mindful approach, which is more, understanding humanity really and be more empathetic. And I think that's what's sometimes missing too, because people are involved in their day-to-day lives, their family lives, the stress of their jobs, and I think a lot of people forget to be human first. So a lot of people are more results driven, which is fine, but I also think you need to understand who you're dealing with and why you're dealing with them and what their background is. So I try to always lead with that kind of personal touch, because I think you get more out of happy people and people that are enjoying themselves than you do when you're barking orders or when you're always full of stress. So I think it's always really important to, because you are working with humans, not everybody's an AI robot yet. So you have to, lead with that kind of empathy, I think, in order to get the best results. So that's sort of what I see is a lot of an issue too, especially in advertising. It's so intense, and there's always stress and pressure of a client leaving and new clients coming and onboarding and, new projects and new stressors that happen every day. So I think that it's really good to keep that kind of levity,
So let's get into that picture. So that doesn't sound uncommon for a lot of industries. So if
Right,
advertising is one where multiple clients, things are happening all the time, things are coming in, out, like that's a lot of pressure. How does that then leader get into that more mindfulness approach?
How does a leader get a more mindfulness approach? Well, I mean, I think it's all comes down to what you do every day. You have your own mindfulness sort of practice. You do your meditation, do your workouts, do your biking, do your climbing, do your swimming. I think that helps, and then you bring that into the workplace. I also think it's about asking the right questions. Make sure you ask questions to people you're working with or working for, and make sure everybody's clear on communication. So I think clear communication is a really big part of it too, because if you can't communicate with somebody or understand why they're doing something or why they want something, then how do you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it? So I think it's really important to have the background structure of, what's driving everything, what's even driving the client, what's driving the brief. So I think that's the main thing that drives mindfulness for sure.
So we just nicely segued off. It's all about the routine. It's all about the day to day. About spieled off some sports, but there's one sport you didn't spiel off, and that was golf. So tell me, John, more about your book, Let Go, Let Golf.
Well, my book, Let Go, Let Golf, is about mindfulness and golf. It's a kind of an amalgamation of self-help gurus' teachings infused into the game of golf. So golf is really a mental game, and I kind of made it more of a practical practice to be more mental on the course in a fun way, and that's sort of helped me get through the plateaus in my game, because everybody who plays golf has plateaus. It's like anything else. It's like you can't get past it, but a lot of times when you have your swing down and you have your technical aspects dialed in, you need something else, and it's the mental game. And this is sort of to get you an edge in that regard. And also, if you don't like golf, if you like self-help or self-improvement, this is another way to live your life. So I sort of correlated golf and life with this. I use golf as a way to metaphor life. So, and it's influenced by, a lot of the great golf books and a lot of the great, self-help gurus like the Ben Hogan and Harvey Penick and Neville Goddard and Alan Watts and Bruce Lee and Wayne Dyer and Sun Tzu and Thich Nhat Hanh, and all those people are all in the DNA of the book. There's all these authors I read and I've been inspired by. I kind of infused there, and I think it really, funnily enough, it really worked. It sort of dovetailed really well. Their teachings, their ideas kind of dovetailed really well to golf lessons. Sort of like breathwork on the course. It really helps. It does, and so, or being more mindful of the nature surroundings, just to have take the lavender and put it in your hands and smell it to get some aromatherapy, or pick the rosemary off the tree for your chicken that night. There's a lot of things you can do while you're playing golf that kind of help you ground yourself into the earth and really help you enjoy yourself more. So it's about really not feeling the pressure of the game, but enjoying the process of getting better.
So what you're telling me is, if you're a busy business owner and a busy business leader who doesn't necessarily want or like to read a lot of self-help books, you're saying go read your one book which encompasses it all, and then go and practice all the different actions and all the different elements in the daily game of golf.
If you like golf, yes. I mean, I can be saying that. You said it, but I'll say it with you. Yes, you can. If you read a self-help, this is a really fun self-help book to read just because it's about golf, which is unique. And it has these really cool illustrations, which are a throwback to the old golf books by Victor Juhas, who's amazing and brilliant. And it's like a little journey. It's like 8 chapters of short stories, and you can kind of pick it up anywhere and read from any area. But it's really it's really just infused with humor and lightness, and it's really about taking the pressure off yourself, And I think if anybody has pressure on themselves and anybody wants to release pressure, it's a good book to read too, because it's like, oh yeah, don't take life so seriously, and lo and behold, when you don't, things improve. Like all of a sudden life meets you in a little bit of a lighter place as opposed to a heavier place. And I think we are living we are a mirror. Life is our mirror, and what I'm trying to reflect back is enjoy it, have fun with it, enjoy the process of improving, because when you enjoy it, you don't really think you're practicing, and when you're not thinking you're practicing, you're like in that flow state, and that's when you really improve. It's not you're like, oh, I gotta go practice, I gotta go do this. You can't look at it like that. You have to look at it like, I can't wait to, and I can't believe it's been 3 hours, I gotta go home, that kind of thing. So that's sort of what I say. It's like a paradox. It's like you get in that childlike flow state where you're playing with your toys, and all of a sudden you realize you're a better chipper, or you're better at your wedge game because you did it for so long and you like it so much, and then you start practicing everywhere. It's like I really am a big advocate of practicing in your home, practicing in your backyard. You don't always have to go to the range, and you don't have to wait to practice. You can practice anywhere. Figure out your spots in your home and your backyard that you can play golf and chip maybe wiffle balls, maybe not real golf balls, but maybe so though anyway if you have balls. That's kind of what I talk about. It's just like how you enjoy it so much. You enjoy it enough where you did I freeze? You enjoy it enough where you kind of, we do it all the time. That's the key. And that's what happens. You get obsessed with it, And when you get good at something, you always want to do something you're good at. So when you start getting better at it, you start practicing more. It's like a never-ending cycle.
Well, exactly. This is a complete segue, but have you seen the guy who I think he is actually kind of a professional golfer, and I do not recommend this at home, where he literally just practices hitting the ball over his house and tries to get a hole in one in the hole.
Bryson DeChambeau. Bryson does that. Yeah, one kid did it, and one kid got it. He gave him $100,000 or something.
Yeah, I saw that. So I bet he's always in that state of play. But I'm more, one of my drivers is like, I'm from a sports background who's been in business, and I love pulling sports techniques and strategies to elevate your business game. And there is one, if you're ever like a sprinter, so I was a sprint swimmer, like this could be applied for a sprint racer, a lot of different sports, but there was always one note from coach all the time, which completely makes sense in this scenario, where if you want to go 100%, you actually need to go 80%. Because when you get between the 8, it's like zone 5, redlining, head out, like you're seeing spots, you're sweating, you're going dizzy. That's 90%, right? And if you're in that state of mind, that high stress, you're not going to get anything done. Whereas what we're talking about here, what you're talking about is like, if you're going 80%, so you've still got that little tiny little bit of room to kick up the gas when things really pressure gets on for a short-term amount of time, you've got it there, rather than trying to be like headlining the whole thing. And I saw the other day like a really beautiful analogy of Usain Bolt, of when he's gone at 100, like 95, 100%, he's ran about 9.98, but actually when he ran at about 80%, where he was super relaxed, he was super comfortable, he was in full energy flow, he ran at 9.5. That's half a second is a really big amount.
That's crazy fast. It's so fast.
I know, it's right.
It's
mind-bogglingly fast.
It's cool that you say this, because that's a great segue, because I have a story in my book, and I talk about the 80% rule, and it's called Old Guide to Young Self, and I talk about when you swing at 80%, you find your 80%. Like know how hard you swing, and then pull it back to 80%. And if you can use that, I say this exact number, if you use that 80%, your ball usually goes straighter, farther, and you play a lot better, because even your back doesn't get thrown out as much either. but it's better to slow it down to that spot, because you find that sweet spot where you find your tempo, because tempo is everything in golf. Having that tempo is really sort of what is the difference between obviously a good round and a bad round, and a good player and a bad player, really. So I always talk about the 80% because it's really important to find that groove. It's that groove state. It's that sweet spot where you can do it all day long and you feel like up, down, and it's real easy. And you're just kind of dropping the hammer and keeping it simple. So it's funny you say that, because I talk about that all the time.
And so how does the person get in? How do they know they're at 80% when, how do they get into being at 80% when playing golf?
That's a good question. You practice. That comes with practice. You got to understand where your limitations are. You got to know your game. Once you know your game, you understand yourself. It's like life. Know yourself, know thyself. Yeah. You understand where your 80% is, and that's usually with practice. I say it, and I have this kind of weird way I say in the book. I say just take a club and swing it back and forth for a while, and then all of a sudden you find you start slowing down to a place where it's like jumping rope, where you can kind of get in that rhythm, and that's your 80. That's the spot. You stay there, and so that's kind of a amateur's way of doing it. But really, how you do it is just practicing and understand, and even using technology. So you can see the distances when you hit it against the screen, or use a track master, or a tracker for your ball flight and your ball speed and your distance, and you start seeing, when I slow it down to this is where my distance is. And so once you know where your tempo is, and even how far you take it back to 10 o'clock, you take it back to 12, you take it back to 9, how far you're hitting it. Once you get yourself dialed in like that, then you can understand where your 80% is, or your 70%, or your 50%, because golf requires all sorts of different shots, and it doesn't necessarily mean you play the same shot with the same club every time. You might hit the same club 20 different ways in one round just because of the shot that's required. So that really comes with practice, and it comes with repetition, and it comes with knowing how your ball moves and how your ball flight is with your club. This is correlated to anything, but I'm just talking about it with golf.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. It's all about repetition. It's all about practice. And then once you know yourself well enough, you'll know where to find your sweet spot.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to sit on this point, because a lot of...
By all means. Go ahead.
we're just gonna sit on here. We're gonna sit on this for a little bit. Well, it's a lot of business owners, business leaders, and I will say not society, and the Instagram, social media does drive this and push this with the hustle movement of everything should be done fast, everything should be done now, you should be making millions straight away. And actually,
that sounds like what's in my head all the time.
Well, but actually, you really, really listen to the big gurus. We're connected through a mutual associate, through a mutual friend, who's put in the reps, who's put in the hours, who's put in just those micro little golf hits every single day. So we only have to go to this said person, and he will just know the information off the top of his head. He'll know what to do straight away, and he makes decisions so freaking quick to the point that it's kind of scary. But because it's that thing of he's played the long game, because the short game is the long way. It is about practicing each day a little bit, hitting the golf. And it's such a good habit to get into. But if golf is the safe place to practice that habit of hitting the ball every single day, like you said, I'm a big fan of James Clear, Atomic Habits. So if you've got a garden where you can go putt for 15 minutes, even 5 minutes every single day, that's going to give you more. It's going to be better for you than trying to drive to the range once a month, for example.
Absolutely.
Working out what that balance is. And so if you can do that in golf, you can then learn that and practice that in business. So if sometimes your bad day in business is just turning up to your desk that day and at least doing a couple of hours rather than trying to kill yourself at 8 hours, well then that mentality shift, that mind shift, this mindfulness is great, I've won today because it was either going to be no hours or 2 hours,
Yeah,
and
so it's
those extra 2 hours will build up over time.
Right, 2 hours of productivity is better than 0. Exactly. It's 100%. I totally adhere to that principle. And also even writing, because it's a creative endeavor, you want to force yourself. You don't want to have to do it when you're not inspired, but you do force yourself to do it. You have to push through those times. And usually that's when a lot of breakthroughs happen. But also, like, I know my process, and I know that when I'm feeling a certain way, I don't do it as much. Or I know that I know myself, and I know when I'm inspired, I'll do like 2 days of work in one day. You just got to know yourself well enough to know that when you're really productive, the mood you're in, or also be proactive when you're not in the mood. So it's a balance between, yes, push through, and also know when you can really rock it and know when you need to scale back a little bit. So I do adhere to that too, for sure. It's like the 80% rule in that as well. Like, you don't want to be disgruntled for eight hours and just twiddle and not get anything done. You'd rather just go hard 2 or 3 hours and get more done, and then kind of have those other 5 hours to kind of recalibrate. Sometimes you're doing other work. Sometimes you do other work. You're not just doing work on a computer. Sometimes it's mental. Sometimes it's, a different type of work you're doing inside yourself. So it's always good to be, mindful to that.
Well, exactly. So let's talk about that flow state. So, things that you've mentioned of the breath work, nature, you grounding yourself and just enjoying that process of getting into that flow state. And you just alluded to it there, was when you're in that flow state, you are going to make better decisions. You are going to be more creative, and you are going to think about how can I keep pivoting and keep adjusting to make this world better. Whether it's your golfing world, your business world, just your family, friends world, whatever it is. What would you recommend first out of some of the things that we've mentioned? So breathwork, nature, grounding yourself. What would be the first thing that you would recommend a person start with if they're brand new to all of this?
Breathing. Just take deep breaths. That's what you start with. I mean, it's not really where you start. It's like whatever you're comfortable with, but everybody has to breathe to live. So I would start with breathing. And, I think it's about, I talk about the phrase meditation in the form of recreation. It's like, find something you like to do as well. Everybody has something they like to do. So you can ground yourself by sewing, or by, like swimming, by running, by golfing, by playing softball, or whatever it is. And I think that's part of it as well. It's like, make sure you're breathing, make sure you're doing something you enjoy. I think those are 2 keys.
And is there any, let's go into breathing, because I know everybody kind of breathes every day, but that's not what we're talking about here. This is actually more the box breathing, the inhaling, just getting the lungs like filled up more than just like our average.
Yeah, I talk about box breathing, and I have a story called Go With What You Got. It's a lot of times where you don't have your game with you, but you have to kind of sort of play the way your ball's going, and you got to sort of go with what you got that the day. And I talk about box breathing for, use that time between shots or between holes or whatever to kind of calm your nervous system down, because when you can't find your game, you got to find yourself first, And so I'm a really big advocate of that. And, just basically taking in nature, look around you, go walk in the grass, go walk at the beach, go look at water. Those are the little things you could do too, without having to be a Zen master, because most people are like, oh, I don't have time to meditate, which is why I talk about recreation as a form of meditation, because, most people don't want to sit down for 15 minutes and close their eyes and, shout Om because they have kids, or they have, other responsibilities, or they have to do whatever. So I think that it's about finding whatever works for you. I'm really not structured in that regard. It's about what works for you, and understand what does work for you, and how to repeat it in a way that helps you every day or when you need it, And that's why I think meditation in the form of recreation is interesting, because the recreation part of it is like, everybody doesn't really realize they're meditating in a way when they're doing something they love, or when they're concentrating on something they're working on that they're really flowing with. And that's what that is. And that was kind of one of the epiphanies I got writing this book and thinking about it. It was, wow, this is interesting, because everybody talks about mindfulness or meditation or whatever, but you really could just do it through something you really like to do. Yeah. That's what that is. And that's what's so cool. And that's the epiphany I hope other people get out of this, is that, wow, I do meditate. I just like crocheting, that's where I do it. And so, or I like writing, or I like whatever it is, twiddling my thumbs, whatever it is. Everybody in the world has something they enjoy, and that's where they can find that mental clarity and that flow state with, right? I think that's really an interesting key too. I thought it was an interesting breakthrough, because people don't look at it like that. They look at it like, oh, meditation, I can't sit there. And man, not everybody does that. And it's really, really important to do that. And it's really great just to kind of not hear your mind all the time. And it's to get rid of that clutter is when you really get that intuitive spark. And sometimes people can't do that, so maybe hop on a bike or maybe go take a walk.
I'm that person. I'm that person who I cannot sit still for life of me and get into that zone space. Like, obviously I can do it if I wanted to, or force myself to. But the word force myself to, I mean, actually, mine's running. Like, I actually don't really like running either. But what I actually find myself addicted to is me just moving my body, because my brain goes into the meditation flow state and I start chewing over stuff. I keep solving things, working things out. And by the end of either, sometimes it just needs to be 30 minutes or 60 minutes, my brain is so clear and it's just so clutter free.
Totally.
I'll do it inside in the winter, but if I can get outside in the summer, so then I'm around nature, then it's like tick, tick. And and I love what you just said there about everybody will have their thing, because really what we're talking about at its core principle is shower thoughts. Shower thoughts is the OG to having a space where you've got no technology, you're just by yourself. You've got that private space. You sometimes you can close your eyes in the shower, but that's your brain going into meditation space. And so when you genuinely have some of your best ideas in the shower, that is why, Exactly.
That is absolutely right. And that's that time. That's like that you time that only you have, because we only live in one space. It's like in our heads. Like everything is consciousness, right? Everything is about where we are in our heads. That's how we experience life. It's really weird when you think about it, but it's true. It's like everybody's in their own head. That's where your God lives. That's where your family lives. That's where your relationships live. So when you really look at it like that, it's really important to make sure you filter in a positive way, because it's what you think about is like what holds your whole life,
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you had an epiphany. You had an epiphany when you wanted to then start and write this book. What was that epiphany? What was that journey look like?
Well, the first epiphany to write this book was when I lived in LA for a long time, for 10 years. And when I worked at HBO and I was in entertainment, and I used to play a lot of golf with my buddy Scott and a bunch of friends, because you're playing a lot more golf in LA, obviously, playing at night. And it's always nice out. And we used to play these fun games. We did cool, fun things during our practice rounds. We always had cool places we go, and we practiced a lot more, and I got a lot better. But we would play games like chipping games and competition games and more gambling and things like that. And I realized, who would really benefit from this is everybody. Everybody should do fun things like this, because this is how you get better. We used to sneak balls, and there's like in Venice Beach, there's these grassy knolls like on the strand, and you can like hit balls from it at the lifeguard towers at night. Not when everybody's there, but we would sneak and like hide from the cops, and we would like whack like 5 woods and try to wait for the sound of the lifeguard stand and getting hit. Like a lot of times it was like there's a lot of silence, but a lot of times you hit it, But things like that are cool because it helps you understand how to hit a shot under pressure and a bad lie, right? That's what it's teaching you. And like when you play at night, it teaches you sort of like to keep a good pace so the lights don't go out before you're done. And there's all these little things that you do in life, and while we were playing fun games, just hit balls everywhere, that really were actually good practice routines. So that's how the book started like that. It was like a fun way to practice book. But because I waited 10 years to write it, and I read all these self-help books, and my life evolved, and I had different experiences, and all these things happened, it became more of a mindfulness handbook. It became like, I was like, well, I have these others. The origin stories were sort of like, fun ways to practice or fun ways to zen out on the course. Like one of my original stories was, your inner iPod, like have a song in your head, keep singing it. Like maybe your friends will start singing it, and just start getting into a groove when you're playing, and everybody's singing, Bon Jovi while you're hitting balls, and you're not thinking about the shot because you're singing Living on a Prayer, like you're not worried about it. Right? So these are like little games. That's how this started. And then it evolved into more like the breathwork thing and the Alan Watts stuff and the whole Neville Goddard sort of law of assumption. I have a whole story about playing in your sleep. When you go drift off to sleep, you get into a hypnagogic stage where you're sort of like, your subconscious can be easily accessed. And I taught you can do that with life, but I talk about with golf. Imagine you're around the next day and imagine what you're doing next. And so everything was relatable. Or scripting, right? They call it spelling for a reason. You're casting spells. And so write out your best round, write out how you feel. And so it works with life too, but I do it toward golf. So it became more of that as because I evolved. So the book idea evolved. And then when I eventually pitched to a publisher and they liked it, that's what the book was. And weirdly enough, like that's what I was reading during the time I was writing it. So like a lot of that's in the DNA. It became like, this is a golf book, but it's a self-help book through the lens of golf. So that's what makes it unique. I think it's a really unique golf book. I don't think there's anything exactly like that out there, just because it's written by an amateur as well. So it's not like Phil Mickelson wrote it and he's like speaking from the heavens about his games. Like nobody's going to be as good as him. So not unless you put the time in background. So I'm writing it for people who don't have the time to play as much and who want to improve as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So all that stuff helps.
And through that journey, then, as you mentioned, it's evolved. You've let your experience craft it, mold it, blend it, and things. What was the one thing that you learned that surprised you the most?
Gosh, that's interesting. Was the one thing I learned that just surprised me the most was how golf correlated with life so much. Like it was like, wow, this is, and then I realized other things do too. It's like life is reflected throughout so many things we do, but specifically with golf, because like it's like the ball is like your soul, right? And you're like thrusting, you hit your ball, you hit your soul out into the universe, right? You hit it, but you only can play it where it lies. So you got to deal with life in that way too, right? You can't really change the past. You have to just keep moving forward. So you got to use what you have and move forward with it. So that's what, like, and you only have tools, right? You only have the tools you have to forge this path ahead, which is like your clubs. But in life, it's your mind, it's your personality, it's your community or whatever it is. So like you have a certain set of tools to project your soul in life in a certain direction. You got to play it where it lies. And then you got to just, whatever your score is, you have another shot or another game, another round or another day to make it up again. You always have, as long as you're breathing, you have another shot. And so that's sort of like, I think it's really profound and interesting how it correlates with life, because as long as you're around, as long as you're alive, you're going to have another shot to play. So you don't have to get discouraged about it. You know that no matter how old you get or how long you're alive or wherever you are in life, the ball's sitting there and you can swing at it as long as you're alive, so that's what's interesting thing
Absolutely.
to keep,
You'll appreciate this. I love movies. I love films, TV series. Like I love everything behind it. And I'm actually going to take a Michael Caine quote and a Michael Caine inspiration. I don't know if you've heard this one, but his whole thing about being an actor that he applied to life, which is exactly what you're saying, is use the difficulty. So as you hit the ball, you hit your soul, you hit life into the atmosphere, and it lands and it goes into a bunker and it goes into the trees. Well, that's a difficulty. So how are you going to use the difficulty when you've got a goalpost, 100 yards away? So for him, and his thing was, he was doing a scene, he was doing like a production, and what happened, this chair flew and he got stuck, and it got stuck in the doorway, which blocked his passage. So he kind of like, as he was doing the scene, he stopped the scene and went to the director being like, look, there's a chair here, there's a chair. And the director was like, use the difficulty. If there's a chair there, use it. Pull it into the scene, pull it into the life, pull it into so if the guy's angry, grab the chair, throw it. If the guy's sad, just slowly but surely push it aside. And
exactly.
Same thing, exactly the same thing in golf is, you've got to get through, past the water, over the bunker. Well, okay, great. They're your points of which you need to just overcome these different challenges, but at least you know where you're going.
Yeah, and exactly, and also like your preparation. The more you practice, the more confidence you're going to have too. You know how to get over that water. You know what you need to hit, and you're going to. So that's a lot of the mental game as well. It's like that's why I'm an advocate of practicing everywhere and keeping yourself prepared, because when you go in there with that confidence, that's mind over matter at that point. You're going to get nervous. Your friends are going to, razz you about whatever, and you kind of know how to hunker down and actually get it done. And that's because you prepared. And I think that's part of it too. But yeah, using the difficulty is a huge thing. It's like we get forged by fire. Diamonds get forged by pressure. So that's sort of how we get refined in life. And I think that you have to use that in life and in anything you do. Golf, you have no choice. You have to play it where it lies. So it is that metaphor. So it's like, all right, well, I hit it behind a tree. Now I got to pitch out and try to hope I make par. That's sort of what you do. You lower your expectations now, and now you kind of play from that angle and or you hit a great shot and now you're like, wow, this could be my day, so it's all about the ups and downs of the game and your life and the round you're actually playing in, and also overcoming those obstacles when they come about, and like understanding that they're here for a reason, and you sort of look at life like that.
And I think this is a great place to end, of just leaving everybody with that one message is it really is about putting the reps in every single day, even when it sucks, and even when there's difficulty, and even when maybe you're not in the right mindset. So tell me, John, where can people buy your book, get your book, and start and enjoy golf, essentially?
Well, they can get it on Amazon, Let Go Let Golf, or they can go to letgoletgolf.com and go to my website and get a little background on it and on me. It's on Goodreads. It's everywhere books are. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's everywhere books are sold. And basically what I would like the takeaway would be like, zig where everybody zags. Like, I'm kind of interested in going analog. When everybody's going digital, go analog. Go to earth. Go to what's natural. Where our ancestors really were meant to, look at. What human beings from 600,000 years ago were meant to look at. We should be looking at too. So I think it's better to get away from your screen and go into nature. Maybe play a little golf, go swimming, do something else to kind of get your mind off the world. We don't have to keep thinking about how AI is taking over everything every 5 minutes.
Oh, exactly.
We're still going to be human. We're not going anywhere.
You're encouraging on my favorite phrase, which we're just complex houseplants at the end of the day.
Right. Exactly. This is great, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, can you sneak peek us anything about what sort of things we can expect from you coming up? I know you've got some exciting things in the works. Is there anything that you can say now?
I could say some things. I'm working on a new book. It's a really interesting concept. It has nothing to do with mindfulness and golf. It's more scientific. It's about how invisible forces affect our health, kind of thing, and that we don't really realize, like weather and air and all this kind of stuff. And I think there's going to be some things coming out in the future that I'll tell about later, but I'm excited about that. And I think that there's going to be, there's a lot. I like the idea of bringing things that are invisible visible. People think there's so many things that we don't think about that affect our lives that are, potent, that we don't realize. And I like the idea of bringing some of that to the forefront. So that's what I'm working on next. And I'm excited about it. That's going to be a little bit of a bigger process than this book, because there's some research involved and science involved and scientists involved and neuroscience. But I'm excited to put that out there because I think it's a really important read, and it's an interesting thing for people to take note of, because we're all affected by it. We just don't realize it.
And I think it's a beautiful, natural step, of starting this journey of personal growth and professional growth. So start with let go, let golf, and then slowly but surely then move on to more of the nerdier, deeper rabbit holes of everything that does, like our environment that does affect us massively, and then how can we use that? So John, Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.